Kaine, I guess you made the deal. You're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Rigas, good to see you again. Mr. Chair, I'd like to introduce into the record an article from Reuters dated May 16, 2025, titled, "Exclusive U.S. Aid Cuts Leave Food for Millions Moldering in Storage."
It will be entered in the record.
Let me just read some excerpts from this article that came out 2 months ago today. Food rations that could supply 3.5 million people for a month are moldering in warehouses around the world because of U.S. aid cuts and risk becoming unstable. The food stocks have been stuck inside 4 U.S. government warehouses since the Trump administration's decision in January to cut global aid programs. A spokesperson for the State Department, which oversees USAID, said in response to detailed questions about the food stocks that it was working to ensure the uninterrupted continuation of aid programs and their transfer by July as part of the USAID decommissioning process. Quote, USAID is continuously consulting with partners on where to best distribute commodities at USAID warehouses. A proposal to hand the stocks to aid organizations is on hold. Finally, nearly 500 tons of high-energy biscuits stored at a USAID warehouse in Dubai are due to expire in July, according to a former USAID official. The biscuits could feed at least 27,000 acutely malnourished children for a month. The biscuits are now likely to be destroyed or turned into animal feed. That article was from 2 months ago. Yesterday, The Atlantic reported that the expiration date on those 500 tons of nutritious food for starving kids was now upon us, and the U.S. had decided to incinerate that food rather than allow starving children to have it. Mr. Rigas, you're the Deputy Secretary for Management and Resources. These are resources that were purchased with U.S. taxpayer dollars. They're specifically designed to save the lives of starving children. Why is it a good use of resources to not distribute that food to kids and instead burn it?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I'd have to look into that particular issue and see how those foodstuffs got there and why they were.
Can I just interrupt for a second? I asked this question at a hearing yesterday so you would be prepared to know that I would ask it today. And we called your office to tell you that I would ask it today. So the notion that you need to look into it strikes me as a little bit odd. As you sit here today, is that food being distributed to kids or is it being incinerated?
If it's been expired, my understanding is it's the policy of the government to not distribute expired food or medicine.
Then given that this has been written about for months, and the article in March that I introduced in the record was not the first, we've been asking Secretary Rubio about this back into March. Since it has been known for months that this food would have an expiration date, why has the State Department decided to burn it rather than distribute it to starving children?
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that question, Senator. I am as distressed about that as you are.
Okay, so I was going to ask you, does that kind of make you feel ashamed? Are you proud of it, or are you indifferent to it?
Look, I don't think it's, I'm not going to say I'm ashamed or proud or indifferent to it, but I think that was a failure.
How about this, just as a statement of proposition? If the U.S. uses taxpayer dollars to buy specialty foods for starving children, I think it's better that the food be distributed to starving children rather than incinerated. You would agree with me?
I completely agree with that. Yeah, I think this was just a casualty of the
I have a hard time. I view it as an intentional thing, because if we suddenly woke up in July, oh gosh, the expiration date is today. Yeah. That would be one thing. But in March, there was a request by the World Food Program and others, look, if you're not going to distribute it, maybe you've decided, the U.S., that starving kids are no longer your thing. But you have this asset. If you're not going to distribute it, we'll distribute it. So it's not a mistake if you've been on notice of it for 2 months and you've made the decision to keep the warehouse locked and allow this food to be destroyed rather than, again, I think the article says this would feed at least 27,000 acutely malnourished children for a month. I mean, so is this incompetence or cruelty or both?
I'd have to look into what the facts of the matter were. If there were another aid organization that was asking to have access to that, to deliver it.
Well, I want you to look into it. I really hoped you'd come to me today and say, having been put on notice, I was going to ask this, we're going to give the food to kids. Hey, you went to Boston University. Who is the most famous BU alum?
The most famous BU alum?
Next to you.
I don't know. I don't want to offend anyone that's graduated from BU. But
I'll tell you who it is.
Okay.
Martin Luther King Jr. What do you think Martin Luther King Jr. would say about a nation that purchased food for starving kids and then locked it in a warehouse until it expired and incinerated it, rather than giving it out so that 27,000 starving kids could survive meagerly for one more month?
Well, we're still the biggest giver of aid anywhere in the world by far. So I think, look,
I'll just conclude. I want to hand it back to you, Mr. Chair. A lot of complicated issues. You know, sometimes the tiniest detail really exposes the soul. You know, we had a big bill that increased the deficit by $3 trillion and big tax breaks and cut SNAP and all of that. But a government that is put on notice, here are resources that will save 27,000 starving kids. Can you please distribute them or give them to someone who can, who decides, no, we would rather keep the warehouse locked, let the food expire, and then burn it. To me, that really exposes the soul of this endeavor. And I am glad to hear you at least say that my questions cause you some concern.
I certainly did say that. I'll say it again. And look, this is a media account, so I'd want to look into, like, I have to, forgive me if I don't always take everything that's reported in the media to be 100% factual, but I do want to find out what happened here and get to the ground truth.
Thank you.
And if that's
Thank you, Mr.
what happened. Thank you.